Hey there, wanderers, thanks for joining me for this tale. If you're new around here, hit that subscribe button. It keeps these stories rolling, and I'd love to know in the comments where you're tuning in from. Now let's dive in. I never imagined I'd abandon the old cabin my grandpa left me. When the world went to hell with the outbreak, that rickety place tucked among the pines became my sanctuary. Picture this, me and my buddy Jace, holed up in that creaky retreat as the last emergency sirens faded into silence. For a while, it worked. We'd rigged up barricades, kept a stash of food, and held off the occasional shambling figure that dared to stumble too close. But as weeks dragged into months, reality sank its teeth in deep. We couldn't hide forever. The signs were everywhere, strange tracks in the dirt, eerie howls piercing the night, and the gnawing dread that our little fortress wouldn't stand against something bigger. One crisp morning, while rummaging through dusty survival kits and tuning into static-filled radio waves, we stumbled on a lifeline. Amid the crackle, a fleeting mention of a safe zone up north, coordinates half heard, whispers of quarantine camps still holding out. It wasn't much, just a scrap of hope in a world gone dark, but it was enough. With no official word to guide us anymore, we had to roll the dice. So there I was, standing on the porch I'd once called home, staring out at a forest that had morphed from peaceful to predatory. Jace fiddled with his pack beside me, his jaw tight, with the same unease churning in my gut. "You sure about this?" he murmured, voice low like the trees might overhear. "Not even a little," I shot back, "but I'd rather take a shot now than sit here waiting for the end." We didn't say it out loud, but we both knew the infected were closing in. The past few nights, something had been probing our defenses, claw marks on the shutters, soft thuds against the walls. We'd fired off what little ammo we had to keep them at bay, but the quiet that followed felt more like a predator biding its time. So we packed light, but smart. Canned beans, jerky, a battered first aid kit, a dead silent radio, and every bullet we could scrounge. I lingered in the doorway, the cabin's familiar scent of pine and mildew tugging at me. "So long," I whispered, "to the place or the past." I wasn't sure, then stepped onto the overgrown trail with Jace at my side. Our plan was simple enough. Stick to the old logging paths, steer clear of highways where the worst of the plague likely festered, and head north. I'd hunted these woods before, knew the twists of the trails, but that comfort turned sour knowing the infection might have spread to the deer or wolves I used to track. The air bit cold that morning, a thin mist curling through the ferns. We moved like ghosts, avoiding brittle twigs, ears pricked for every snap or caw. Jace trailed a step behind, rifle clutched like a lifeline. Words felt too loud, too dangerous, so we let the forest's hush swallow us whole. A few hours in, the trees parted into a clearing where an abandoned lumber camp sprawled, rusted saws and splintered crates choked by weeds. I'd passed it 100 times in better days, but now it loomed like a graveyard. "This feels off," Jace muttered, eyes darting. I nodded, skin prickling. The stillness was too heavy, like the place itself was holding its breath. We could have detoured through thicker woods, but that'd mean losing the path we knew. So we pressed on, weaving past decayed machinery, boots sinking into mossy earth. Halfway through, a sharp clang rang out, metal on metal. My heart slammed against my ribs as Jace dropped low, rifle up. We froze, scanning the shadows, but nothing stirred. Then a faint skitter, a squirrel, maybe, darted through the junk. I let out a shaky breath, but the unease clung like damp clothes. Beyond the clearing, the logging road snaked on through towering pines. Crows called overhead, their cries sharp against the quiet. By noon, we paused at a burbling creek to refill our canteens. A gamble, but dehydration wasn't an option. Jace stood guard while I filtered water through a makeshift rig. Sunlight speckled through the branches, almost peaceful, until Jace tapped my shoulder. "Look at this," he hissed, nodding at a birch tree. Carved into the bark was a rough arrow pointing north, flanked by two strange letters, fresh cuts, not a day old. Someone had been here, leaving a sign. Could be others like us, Jace said, voice barely audible. Or a lure, I countered. Still, north was our heading anyway. If these strangers knew a safe route, it was worth the risk. We followed the marker, sticking to cover, senses razor sharp. Miles later, we hit a makeshift blockade, stacked logs and dented metal sheets, a wrecked pickup on its side. It screamed desperation, and the claw marks gouging the steel told a story of failure. Bullet holes pocked the truck's frame. Dark stains smeared the seats. My stomach twisted. Whoever fought here lost. But had they escaped north on foot? We slipped past, the wreckage fading behind us as the trees thinned. By late afternoon, distant hills rolled into view, a sight that might have been gorgeous once. Now, it was just a checkpoint on a map we didn't have. No camping in the open tonight, I said, memories of those cabin shadows creeping back. Jace squinted ahead. My dad used to talk about a ranger post near that ridge. Could be a roof over our heads if it's still standing. It was our best bet. We pushed hard, the terrain turning rugged, every rustle setting us on edge. The infection had taught us focus was survival. As dusk bled into twilight, a faded sign flickered into sight. Ranger Station, 1 mile. Relief flickered, faint but real. The station emerged soon after. A squat wooden building, fenced in with barbed wire, windows boarded tight. Someone had tried to fortify it, but scuff marks on the gate hinted at trouble. We crept closer. Anyone here? I called softly. Silence answered. The gate's lock was battered. A quick pry with my crowbar snapped it open. Inside, the yard was a mess. Overgrown weeds, scattered trash. The front door's boards were loose. We pried one free and slipped in, flashlights cutting through the gloom. The air reeked of mold and neglect. Desks toppled, papers strewn like confetti. In a side room, Jace found a cabinet, spare batteries, a rusty toolkit, a first aid pack, small wins in a losing game. I dug up some dried rations among the clutter. No one was here now, but footprints in the dust and a half-melted candle said someone had been. Had they fled or been dragged out? We barricaded the door and settled in. The forest's night sounds humming outside. An owl's hoot, a rustle of leaves, and something heavier, lurking beneath it all. Our sanctuary felt flimsy, but it was ours for now. Tomorrow, we'd push north again, chasing whispers in the dark. The ranger station's walls creaked around us as night deepened, a fragile shield against whatever prowled outside. Jace and I had barely settled when a dull thump jolted me awake, my flashlight slicing through the dark. Another thud, closer, wood groaning under pressure. I nudged Jace, his eyes snapping open. You hear that? I whispered, pulse racing. He nodded, grabbing his rifle. We pressed against the wall, breath shallow, as a low growl seeped through the boards. Not quite human, not quite beast. My mind flashed to those cabin nights, the unseen claws testing our resolve. The sound circled, scraping along the exterior, rattling the makeshift barricade. Twice, the boards shuddered, but whatever it was didn't break through. After an eternity, the noises faded, leaving us wired and sleepless in the stale air. Dawn painted the station gray. Jace looked wrecked, shadows bruising his eyes. We can't stay, I said, slinging my pack. That thing might bring company. He unfolded a crumpled map from a closet. If we climb this ridge, it's downhill toward open land, maybe farms or towns. Could be safer. I barely knew the northern slopes, but open ground sounded better than these claustrophobic woods. We grabbed what we could, extra batteries, those stale rations, a chipped hatchet, and snapped a phone pic of an old radio frequency list pinned to the desk. No signal, but hope's a stubborn thing. Stepping outside, the forest stared back, cold mist swirling in our breath. The chain-link fence clinked in the breeze as we started up the ridge. The climb was brutal. Rocks shifted underfoot, fallen logs blocked the way, and the wind stung our faces. Our packs dug into our shoulders, but the higher we got, the more we could see. Endless pines stretching south, the station a faint dot below. Deer flashed through the trees twice, too fast to tell if they were clean or cursed. Ravens wheeled above, their cries slicing the quiet. By midday, legs burning, we hit a rocky switchback. Jay slipped on loose stones, and I hauled him up, hard in my throat. "Watch it," I said. "We're no good with a busted ankle." Near dusk, we crested the ridge. Wind whipped sharp, but the valley below stole my breath, fields patchwork quilted with barns and farmhouses, a promise of life amid the ruin. I pulled out binoculars, scanning the scene. A collapsed barn caught my eye, dark shapes dotting the fields nearby. People? Animals? Something worse? Jace peered through. Movement, but I can't tell what. Farms mean food, maybe wheels, worth a shot. We agreed to descend cautiously, camp in the foothills, and hit the farms at dawn. The downhill trek was faster, but dicey, loose earth slid under us as we watched for threats. Dusk found us under a rocky overhang, a tiny fire crackling from scavenged twigs. The night was quieter, no moans, no scratches, but the silence felt hollow, like the woods were playing coy. I took first watch, the wind's lonely whistle threading through the pines. Jace nodded off, and I shook him awake later, sinking into fitful dreams of empty barns hiding silent eyes. Morning dawned gray, clouds smudging the sun. We ate jerky, broke camp, and hit the valley floor. A wire fence loomed, rusted, grass tangled, gate unlatched. Beyond it, a farmhouse sagged, paint peeling, windows black. A half-fallen barn stood further off, radiating rot. We approached, rifles ready, the quiet pressing down. The farmhouse door hung ajar, swaying with a faint creak, an open invite or a setup. Circling to a side window, I glimpsed chaos. Chairs toppled, clothes scattered. "Hello," I called. Nothing but echoes. Inside, the story unfolded, bullet holes in the plaster, a dried smear on the kitchen floor. Someone had fought and lost. Jace waved me to a small office. A map hung on the wall, circles scrawled in ink, quarantine post, block zone, and up north, military hold. A notebook lay open, frantic scribbles about infected livestock and a final plea. "Head north to the camp. Nothing left here." My chest tightened with cautious hope. "This backs up the rumors," I said. Jace tucked the map away. The pantry was bare save for 2 stale granola bars, better than empty hands. The barn was next, its stench hitting us before we got close. Breaches gaped in the walls. Inside, hay bales rotted beside a dead horse, patchy fur, stiff limbs, flies buzzing. No wounds, just decay. Had it turned or starved? "Let's go," Jace said, voice tight. We crossed the property, the valley dipping beyond another fence. Somewhere out there might be that circled camp. Days blurred into scavenging and dodging, more farms, all gutted, windows smashed, a silo pleading help US in faded paint. No one answered our calls. Night brought distant snarls. Twice, glowing eyes tracked us from the fields, coyotes, maybe, or worse. On the 4th day, skirting a poplar grove, an engine's hum broke the stillness. We ducked low, peering out. A battered truck crawled along a dirt road, weaving like the driver was spooked. "People," Jace breathed, eyes alight. "Maybe trouble," I warned. We decided to signal, staying hidden till we could gauge them. Jogging parallel, we got close. Jace waved, shouting, "Hey!" The truck jolted to a stop. A grizzled man leapt out, ragged beard, rifle raised. "Freeze," he barked. "We're clean," I yelled, hands up. "Just heading north." He squinted, then lowered the gun. "Just you two." We nodded. He beckoned us over, tense but thawing. His name was Ellis, a farmer turned nomad, scouring back roads for kin or safety. The plague had torched his town. He'd heard the same northern whispers we had. "Camp's a long shot," he grunted, "but I'll drive you till the tank's dry. Beats walking." We climbed in, the truck rattling to life. North called louder now, a thin thread of purpose in the chaos. Ellis's truck grumbled along dirt paths, a lifeline cutting through the wreckage of farmland and meadows. Jace and I traded wary glances from the cab, but the miles ticked by faster than our blistered feet could have managed. Ellis kept to winding lanes, dodging highways where the infected likely swarmed. We spotted a few shamblers in the distance, lurching shapes easily outrun with the press of the gas. Once, a snarling dog gave chase, but it tired fast, vanishing in the dust. Tension eased as we swapped stories. Ellis cracked a dry laugh, recounting how he'd siphoned gas from a ritzy sedan at a golf course, a deer bounding past like it owned the place. Even in this mess, life found ways to surprise. But we never relaxed fully. Every few minutes, Jace or I scanned the rear view, half expecting a horde to spill from the trees. Day 2 in the truck, I dug out my old radio, twisting the dial through static. Near dusk, a voice flickered through, garbled, faint, north, latitude, quarantine. We froze, leaning in. Ellis tweaked the knob, but the words slipped away, leaving only that tantalizing echo. Could be our ticket, Jace said, voice alive with hope. Or a ghost signal, Ellis countered, skeptical. Still, it fueled us. A real broadcast meant someone, somewhere, was holding on. As night loomed, we spied a highway checkpoint ahead, concrete slabs, a toppled guard shack, cars strewn like toys. Could be loot, I said, or trouble. Ellis parked behind a thicket, engine cut. Quick look, then we're gone. Jace and I crept forward, rifles up, the fading sun stretching shadows across cracked pavement. The place was a battlefield, smashed windows, bullet casings glinting, a military truck gutted with crates spilled open. Inside the shack, papers littered the floor, intake forms for the infected, half finished. Jace pried open a cabinet. MREs, bandages, water purifiers, a cracked box of flares. Score, he whispered, stuffing our packs. Then a snarl ripped the air. An infected staggered from behind the shack, eyes milky, arms jerking. Another lurched into view, moaning. My shot dropped the first, Jace's fell the second. The blasts echoed, too loud, too bright. Run, I hissed. We bolted for the truck, Ellis gunning it as we dove in. The checkpoint faded behind us, but the gunfire lingered in my ears, a beacon for anything nearby. We'd scored supplies, but at a cost. Ellis gripped the wheel tighter after that, doubts creeping in. North's a pipe dream, he grumbled later. We should hole up, fortify. Jace bristled. We've got a signal, proof something's out there. We can't quit. The debate simmered, unresolved. I saw both angles, safety and hiding, promise and pushing on. We agreed to ride the truck's last fumes north, then reassess. Late the next day, the engine coughed, then died. The truck lurched into a hidden dip in a meadow, front tire sinking. Damn it, Ellis growled, wrestling the wheel. We climbed out, scanning the overgrown stretch. A weathered sign read Hidden Creek Reserve. The roads here were crumbling, forgotten. Pushing the truck was futile, fuel was gone. End of the ride, Ellis said, shrugging. We salvaged what we could, sleeping bags, food, purifiers, and trekked on foot, guided by a rough map Ellis carried. Twilight pressed in as we followed a faint trail, weeds clawing at our legs. Water rushed nearby, a creek gleamed ahead, its bridge half collapsed. We debated crossing when Ellis froze, rifle up. Something's there, he hissed, nodding upstream. A shadow flickered in the trees, low and fast. A guttural snarl rolled out, then silence. My pulse spiked, animal or infected. It didn't matter in the dark. We backtracked to a boulder cluster, rigging tripwires with Ellis's cord and stacking rocks for cover. The night crawled by, snarls circling, gravel crunching, but nothing attacked. Dawn found us haggard, packing up fast. The trail led to a clearing where a lodge squatted among pines, Hidden Creek Lodge, the sign boasted, paint flaking. Hope flickered. A real building could mean real shelter. Movement flashed inside. We're clean, I shouted, hands raised. A woman stepped out, crossbow steady, young, sharp-eyed. Two men followed, one older, grizzled, the other nursing a slung arm. No tricks, she warned. Just passing through, I said. Heading north, heard of a camp. Her eyes flickered. We caught a broadcast too, coordinates, something about quarantine. Inside, the lodge was a haven, cots lined up, a stove humming, supplies stacked. They were Mia, Hank, and Leo, survivors like us, clinging to this outpost after an infected raid gutted their group. They'd heard the same radio whispers, but fear and injuries kept them rooted. We traded tales, our cabin escape, the checkpoint run, their lost companions. Mia showed us a sketch of the reserve's north edge, a service road that might lead out. Hank eyed us. "You're chasing that camp?" "Worth a shot," Ellis said. They hesitated, then offered a deal. We'd scout the road, report back. If it looked clear, they'd join us, dragging Leo along somehow. That night, the lodge's sturdy walls cradled us, a rare taste of safety. Tomorrow, we'd hunt answers in the wild unknown. Dawn broke cold over Hidden Creek Lodge, the pine scent thick as we prepped to scout north. Mia handed us her hand-drawn map. The service rode a jagged line cutting through the reserve. Jace, Ellis, and I set out, the forest dense with birch and spruce, the usual bird chatter replaced by an eerie wind. Every step crunched too loud, every shadow too deep. An hour in, we found tracks, 5 or 6 sets, fresh in the mud, veering west. Survivors or hunters? We tightened our grips and kept moving. Soon, a deer carcass sprawled across the path, half-eaten, eyes milky, flesh torn. My stomach churned. The infection's reach was growing claws. "Keep sharp," Ellis muttered, stepping wide. The trees thinned near a rise, the service road unfurling below, rutted, grass-choked, but passable. A lone cabin sat downslope, shutters sealed. We were turning back when a drone hummed overhead, swelling into a roar. A helicopter sliced the sky, low and deliberate, banking northwest. "Holy hell," Jace gasped, waving wildly. No response. The chopper vanished over the pines. But it lit a fire in us. "Military, maybe," I said. "Proof something's out there." Ellis nodded, grim hope flickering. "Let's tell the others." We raced back, the lodge a welcome sight. Mia and Hank met us, tense until we spilled it all. Tracks, the deer, the chopper. "Someone's flying," Mia said, eyes bright. "We're in." Hank grunted. "Leo's leg shot, but we'll rig something." For 2 days, we prepped. Jace and Hank built a cart from lodge scraps. Mia merged our supplies, food, water, a dwindling ammo stash. Ellis crafted shields from plywood and tin, flimsy, but better than nothing. That last night, anticipation buzzed. We were 6 now, a ragged crew gambling on a whisper. At first light, we rolled out. 2 carts, Leo propped in one, determination our fuel. The trail was slow going. Leo's weight dragged us, and every rustle sparked a flinch. The lodge faded behind us, a chapter closed. No retreat now, only forward. By dusk, we hit the service road, camping under a tarp strung between trees. The chopper didn't return, but its echo drove us on. Morning brought a slog through mud and brambles, the road winding north. Shapes flickered in the distance twice. Deer, or worse, too quick to tell. Eyes peeled, Hank rasped, hauling Leo's cart. Near noon, the road dipped into a hollow. A rusted sign read north boundary. Beyond, fields peeked through thinning trees. Open land, risky but promising. Mia scanned with binoculars. Buildings, farms, maybe a town. Could be trouble too, Ellis warned. We pressed on, the hollow opening to a fence line. A farmhouse loomed, windows dark, a barn sagging nearby. Silence reigned, heavy and wrong. The front door gaped open. Inside, chaos reigned. Tables flipped, walls pocked with bullets. A map on the kitchen wall bore circled spots. Safe zone, outpost, north hold. A scrawled note begged, "Go north, nothing left." "Same story," I said, folding it into my pack. The barn reeked of death, a cow, half-rotted, eyes clouded. The infection's fingerprints were everywhere. We moved on, the valley stretching wide. Days blurred, more farms, all hollow, gates smashed. A bridge bore Save US in chipped paint, but no saviors came. Night brought growls. Once, a pack of shapes, dogs or coyotes, watched us from a ridge, eyes glinting. We huddled tight, rifles ready. On day 4, an engine's rumble snapped us alert. A jeep crawled along a side path, lurching oddly. Survivors? Mia whispered. Or a fight? Hank grunted. We shadowed it, then waved it down. The driver, a weathered woman named Tara, stepped out, shotgun raised. Who are you? She snapped. Clean, I called. Heading north, heard of a camp. She lowered the gun, wary. Tara was a mechanic, scavenging since her crew fell. She'd caught the same radio hint. A quarantine zone up north. Fuel's low, she said, but I'll take you far as I can. We piled in, Leo's cart lashed to the back. The jeep roared north, farmland giving way to scrubby hills. Tara dodged main roads, but the open land left us exposed. Once, infected staggered from a ditch. 3 shots dropped them, but the noise rang in my skull. Day 2 with Tara, the radio crackled again. Quarantine north, faint, but real. It's close, Jace said, gripping the seat. Or a trap, Tara muttered. Dusk brought a checkpoint. Barriers toppled, a guard post gutted. We scavenged. MREs, a med kit, flares, then froze as moans echoed. 2 infected lurched from the wreckage. Our shots felled them, but more rustled nearby. We bolted, the jeep peeling out as shadows stirred. Too close, Tara hissed, knuckles white. The jeep died the next day, sinking into a rutted trail. Pine Hollow Reserve, a sign read. We salvaged gear and trekked on, Tara's map pointing north. Night fell fast. By a creek, a snarl froze us. Something prowled, unseen. We camped behind rocks, wired tight, its growls circling till dawn. Exhausted, we pushed on, a lodge rising ahead, Pine Hollow retreat. Faces peered out, cautious but human. We'd found others, and with them, a fragile new spark. Pine Hollow retreat glowed faintly in the dawn, sturdy, lived in, a lifeline after days of dirt and dread. Tara, Jace, and I approached, hands up. We're clean, I yelled. Heading north. A man emerged, burly, gray-streaked, flanked by a wiry kid and a woman with a bandaged hand. Rifles stayed up, but their eyes softened. Prove it, the man growled. We stepped slow, weapons down. Inside, the lodge hummed. Cots, a stove, a generator purring low. They were Cal, Riley, and Dana, clinging to this haven after their town fell. They'd heard the radio too. Coordinates, a northern sanctuary, but injuries and fear pinned them here. Our tales synced. My cabin, Tara's jeep, their raided outpost. Cal showed a frequency log. Dana's sketch mapped a north trail. You chasing it? Cal asked. Damn right, Tara said. They wavered, then struck a deal. We'd scout. They'd prep to follow if it panned out. That night, the lodge's warmth sank in, a flicker of normal in the chaos. Dawn sent us 3 north, forest thick and silent. Tracks crisscrossed the mud. Human, fresh, then a mauled elk, infections marked clear. The trail crested, a pitted road snaked below, a cabin shuttered tight. Then a roar split the sky, a chopper, low and loud, banking north. We waved, screaming, but it faded fast. Someone's flying, Jace panted. We're close. We raced back, Cal's crew ready when we burst in. It's real, I said. Chopper, northwest. Riley grinned. We're with you. 2 days of prep. Carts for Dana, gear pooled, shields rigged. At sunrise, 9 of us rolled out, slow, wary, hope a thin thread. The road stretched, fields opening wide. A farmhouse loomed, gutted but holding a circled map, final zone. Days bled on. Growls shadowed us, but we dodged hordes. Tara's jeep skills lingered in our pace. Cal's grit kept us steady. Day 5, a tower rose, barbed wire, lights faint but real. A voice crackled over Dana's radio. "Survivors, advance slow, hands up." We froze, then complied, a gate creaking open. Soldiers, tired, armed, waved us in. Tents sprawled, a quarantine camp humming with life. We'd made it against the odds. The infection stole so much, but here we stand, searching, surviving. If you're out there, keep looking for that flicker of hope. Like, subscribe, stay sharp. Till next time.